I suppose it's quaint, Elara, like a life-size dollhouse for dough. The hook was delivered by my sister, Seraphina, with a theatrical sigh that misted the glass display case. She stood in the middle of the Hearth Crumb, the bakery I had built with 10 years of sweat, flour, and sleepless nights. She hadn't come to visit. She had come to judge. My name is Elara Vance. I am 34 years old. My sister, Seraphina, 36, and my entire family, the Vances, define success by corporate titles, market share, and aggressive, non-perishable assets. I, the black sheep, was defined by the smell of yeast and burnt sugar. My little bakery was my sanctuary, but to them it was my greatest failure. The context and character intro was rooted in their unwavering belief in the corporate ecosystem. My father, Arthur Vance, was a retired but still powerful CEO of a national financial auditing firm. My brother, Julian, 38, was an executive at a major private equity firm. Seraphina was a rising star in corporate law. Their careers were tangible. Mine was dismissed as frivolous. The background conflict began 13 years ago when I rejected their pressure to attend law school, choosing instead the Culinary Institute and the dream of owning my own Artisan bakery. Arthur's reaction was immediate and brutal. A hobby, Elara. You're choosing a hobby over your lineage. You will never know real success. He cut me off, forcing me to fund my own dream through brutal part-time work and loans, while showering my siblings with financial support and professional connections. The current event trigger was ostensibly my birthday lunch, which my mother, Eleanor, had reluctantly agreed to hold at the Hearth Crumb. The real purpose, however, was for Seraphina to inspect the failure firsthand before a major family gathering next week. The humiliation scene began the moment Seraphina stepped past the antique cash register. "Look at the counter space, Julian," she called to my brother, who was perched awkwardly on a small stool, scrolling disdainfully through his phone. "She can barely turn around in here." "Do you remember when Dad told her she needed scale?" Julian chuckled, not looking up. "Yes, Rena. This entire operation is probably smaller than my firm's executive bathroom." My mother, Eleanor, attempted a softer form of cruelty. "Honestly, dear, I worry about your retirement. You work such long hours for what? I tried to tell your father that baking isn't scalable. It requires your hands, Elara. You need leverage, dear, not flour dust." The truth was, the bakery was immensely successful. We specialized in heritage grain sourdough and complex European pastries, commanding a devoted following and prices that reflected our quality. But I had kept my financial success completely hidden. I paid my loans, bought my small city condo, and built a substantial private portfolio, all while deliberately maintaining the outward appearance of a struggling artisan. I knew that the moment I showed the Vances financial stability, they would try to control it. The proof of worth was sitting hidden in the back office. For 6 months, I had been engaged in a clandestine operation, known only to my CFO and my legal counsel. I was a finalist for the prestigious National Pioneer Entrepreneur Award, sponsored by a major foundation and televised live across the country. I had gone through 3 rounds of grueling interviews and financial vetting, submitting revenue figures that would make my father choke on his designer tie. Seraphina moved toward the back, peering through the small window into the kitchen where my head baker, Maria, was meticulously shaping loaves. "This is where the magic happens, I assume? The culinary magic that can't be leveraged? It's where the value is created, Seraphina," I replied, my voice calm, resisting the urge to point out that her law firm's entire billing structure was built on leveraging other people's problems. She turned back, picking up a framed photograph of a massive industrial-grade mixer I had recently acquired. "What is this monstrosity? Did you actually sink profit into more equipment?" "That is a custom-built automated mixer," I explained. "It allows us to scale production without sacrificing the integrity of the fermentation process. It's the key to our next expansion phase," Seraphina snorted. "Expansion? Into the unit next door? Elara, a bakery is a small business. It's a charming lifestyle choice. It's not a growth engine. When will you accept that you chose a ceiling instead of a ladder?" Julian chimed in from the stool. "Look, Mom, she's happy filling her pantry, right? That's what matters, as long as she doesn't come asking Dad for capital." The insult, delivered with casual cruelty, landed squarely on my decade of hard work. I had not taken a dime from them, yet they assumed my poverty was inevitable. I took a deep breath. The award ceremony was tonight, and they were all required to attend the gala for Arthur's foundation, which coincidentally was sponsoring the event. Actually, Julian, I said, placing my hands flat on the counter, I want to thank you for bringing up the issue of scale and success. It allows me to clarify something before your next family gathering. Arthur walked in, drawn by the sudden shift in my tone, his expression instantly suspicious. Clarify what, Elara? That you finally realized bread is a commodity? Clarify that I am fully aware of what real success looks like, I stated, pulling out a plain, elegant invitation from beneath the counter. It bore the seal of the National Pioneer Entrepreneur Award. And I'm fully prepared to meet it. I slid the invitation across the counter to my father. He picked it up, his expression hardening as he recognized the logo of the foundation that sponsored the award, a foundation with close ties to his former firm. He read the card, and his eyes instantly narrowed when he reached the name. Elara Vance, finalist. Finalist? Arthur scoffed, still clinging to the narrative. For what? Most charming sourdough? No, Dad, I corrected him. Finalist for the National Pioneer Entrepreneur Award. The award recognizes leadership, innovation, and demonstrable national impact. The ceremony, by the way, is televised live tonight. I assume you all have tickets for the gala, as your foundation is a sponsor. Seraphina snatched the card from Arthur. Her eyes widened as she read the full, impressive list of criteria and the recognized professional status of the award. This is a business award, Elara. What are they recognizing? How can a little bakery qualify for national impact? They are recognizing a successful, profitable business that I scaled nationally through proprietary direct-to-consumer digital logistics and my work in heritage grain research, I explained, letting the corporate jargon sink in. My little bakery, Seraphina, is now a multi-platform company with a valuation that I assure you exceeds your annual salary. The turning of tables began. Arthur's face was a study in professional terror. He wasn't upset about the achievement. He was terrified about the public exposure of his daughter's hidden success, which directly contradicted his decade of public dismissal. You never told us, Arthur demanded, his voice rising. You've been secretly building a national firm? I didn't tell you because every time I shared my passion, you called it a hobby, I said, the pain of a decade finally sharpening my voice. I chose to keep my scale private until it was undeniable. And tonight, Dad, my scale will be presented on live national television. Julian, the private equity executive, finally looked up from his phone, his face betraying pure financial calculation. Wait, Elara, if the valuation is high, you must be looking at a Series A round. Do you need seed capital? My firm is fully capitalized, Julian. I cut him off smoothly. I won't be needing any of your firm's services. In fact, I'm expecting an acquisition offer next quarter that will make this entire conversation irrelevant. I looked at the wreckage, my mother staring blankly at the floor, Seraphina clutching the award card like it was a physical threat, and my father trying to rapidly calculate the cost of his public humiliation. I need to leave now, I stated. I have a dress fitting for the red carpet entrance. The aftermath was a hurricane of frantic, corporate damage control. The Vances could tolerate failure, but they could not tolerate public, unauthorized success. Arthur's calls and texts were immediately directed to my legal counsel, Mr. Chen, who calmly informed him that any attempt to interfere with the award ceremony would result in immediate public disclosure of the family's decade of financial and emotional abandonment. My mother, Eleanor, tried the emotional blackmail. She appeared at my condo that afternoon, tearfully demanding to know why I had cut her off from my success. It's not fair, Elara. We are your family! Your father needs this goodwill. You can't let this go public without us sharing the narrative. You will share the narrative, Mom, I promised her, standing firm in the doorway. You will be seen in the front row at the gala tonight, silently acknowledging the success you mocked. That is the only narrative you will share. I had my makeup and hair done at the salon, preparing for the most important night of my professional life. My emotions were a high-wire act, excitement about the award, terror of the public spotlight, and the deep, cold satisfaction of the revenge I was about to enact. That evening, the National Pioneer Entrepreneur Award Gala was a sea of black ties, glittering gowns, and financial power. The Vances, Arthur, Eleanor, Seraphina, and Julian, were seated at a prominent table near the front, required guests due to their foundation sponsorship. They looked tense, pale, and utterly out of place, watching the red carpet. I made my entrance precisely 20 minutes before the show began. I was not in a dress they would recognize. I was wearing a deep emerald gown, tailored and elegant, exuding the quiet authority of a true leader. I walked the red carpet with Mark, my CTO, and Mrs. Lynn, my initial business mentor. The cameras flashed, the lights blinded, and the event hostess announced my name and title, Elara Vance, CEO and founder of the Hearth Crumb Ventures. I saw my family then. Arthur's face was rigid, a mask of forced composure. Eleanor looked like she might faint. Seraphina, usually so composed, had her hand clamped over Julian's arm, her jaw slack with horror. Their world was spinning out of control. The ceremony was broadcast live on a major financial network. The first half was dedicated to acknowledging the sponsors, including Arthur's foundation, a final ironic nod to his diminishing corporate life. Then came the moment of truth. The host, a famous business journalist, took the stage. And now, we come to our final award of the evening, the National Pioneer Entrepreneur Award. This award recognizes the individual who took a risk, solved an old problem with new technology, and built a sustainable model for the future. The winner receives the prestigious Golden Globe and an immediate seed investment of $5 million for future expansion. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had been pre-vetted, but the winner was still a surprise. The journalist opened the envelope. And the National Pioneer Entrepreneur Award goes to Elara Vance, CEO of the Hearth Crumb Ventures. The ballroom erupted. The spotlight swung and found me. I rose, feeling a surge of pure, unadulterated triumph that washed away a decade of emotional pain. I walked past the tense tables, the applause ringing in my ears. As I passed the Vance table, I paused briefly. I didn't speak. I simply met my father's eyes, raising a small, elegant eyebrow. A silent thank you for cutting me off, for forcing me to build this success alone. I accepted the award, the Golden Globe heavy in my hand. I stood at the podium, staring out at the sea of faces, knowing that millions were watching this moment. I want to thank the foundation, I began, my voice clear and steady. And I want to thank my team, my investors, and my early customers. But tonight, I want to dedicate this award to the people who were my earliest, and perhaps my most effective motivators. I took a deep breath, knowing my family was watching every word on the massive screens flanking the stage. 13 years ago, when I left my planned career path to pursue my dream, I was told my choice was a hobby. I was told I would never know real success. I was told that my dedication to creating something meaningful with my hands, my science and my heart was a dead end. The camera zoomed in on my face, capturing the quiet intensity of my gaze. To my family, I continued, letting the word sink in with all its charged meaning. Thank you for the dismissal. Thank you for the ridicule. Thank you for cutting me off, financially and emotionally. Because every time you called my dream a hobby, I worked harder to ensure the return was undeniable. This award, this $5 million investment, and the company standing behind it, is the direct result of the scale you forced me to seek. The audience, sensing the deeply personal drama, burst into applause, a collective acknowledgement of the narrative playing out before them. I didn't mention their names, but everyone in that room, and every corporate partner watching the broadcast, knew exactly who I was addressing. I was dedicating my national triumph to their failure to support me. The long-term consequences were immediate, financial, and emotional, a comprehensive reversal of fortune that shattered the Vances' world. The Vances were cornered. The foundation they sponsored had just publicly honored the success they spent a decade mocking. Arthur's peers, watching the broadcast, instantly recognized the catastrophic failure of his paternal judgment. The day after the ceremony, Arthur requested an emergency meeting. He arrived at my new corporate offices, a sleek, modern space that overlooked the harbor, far surpassing the elegance of his old firm's headquarters. "Elara," he began, his voice devoid of its former authority, "we need to talk about family and capital." "We are talking about capital, Arthur," I corrected him, using his first name with sharp formality. "But family is no longer a factor in this equation. You are here to discuss a professional relationship." He pushed a folder across the desk. "Vance & Associates is facing a severe liquidity issue. We need a short-term, substantial investment to cover bond obligations before Q3. I need access to capital. I need the $5 million the foundation gave you, Elara. The final proof of worth was this request. The man who scoffed at my hobby was now begging for my capital to save his own firm. Vance & Associates is a failing model, Arthur, I stated, my eyes scanning the financial figures he presented. It is over-leveraged, technologically obsolete, and reliant on outdated networking models. Investing $5 million would be an act of professional negligence on my part. But I'm your father. You have a moral obligation. You taught me my only obligation was to tangible return and professional competence, I countered. Vance & Associates offers neither. The only investment I would consider is an acquisition. Arthur looked horrified. You want to buy my company? I want to merge V&A's legacy accounts into my ventures, restructure the whole operation digitally, and secure the assets for long-term viability, I explained. I would acquire 75% of the firm, liquidate the obsolete physical assets, and absorb the remaining personnel into my growing corporate structure. You and Julian would be given comfortable consulting roles, but all operational authority ends immediately. Arthur refused, his pride still clinging to the wreckage. He left my office defeated, but unwilling to surrender his control. Julian tried next, appealing to a shallow sense of sibling loyalty. I offered him a position as the head of financial logistics within the Hearth Crumb ventures, reporting directly to me, a position that required him to oversee the very digital systems he had mocked. He scoffed, walking out to maintain his pride, only to find himself unemployed a month later when Arthur's firm finally collapsed. The ultimate consequence was swift. 3 months after the award ceremony, Vance & Associates declared bankruptcy. The failure was public, dramatic, and humiliating, all stemming from the outdated model Arthur refused to discard. I, Elara Vance, stepped in quietly through my legal and financial entities, acquiring the valuable residual assets of V&A at a fractional cost. I didn't save the family firm. I purchased its usable pieces to fuel my own empire. I kept Arthur and Eleanor financially stable, ensuring they were comfortable in their retirement, but I cut all personal ties. Their punishment was the quiet knowledge that every luxury they enjoyed, every moment of peace, was funded by the success of the hobby they had scorned. Julian, humbled and broke, eventually reached out, not for money, but for advice on starting a new digital career. I gave him a non-disclosure agreement and a list of entry-level courses. He had to start over, building his life from the ground up, just as I had. 7 years after the award ceremony, I sat in the executive suite of my new national headquarters, looking out at the city skyline. The Hearth Crumb Ventures was a national brand, synonymous with innovation and quality. I was one of the most respected female entrepreneurs in the country. The final moral closure came during a quiet moment of reflection. My father had defined my worth by money and scale, forcing me into a difficult solitude. I had responded by achieving both, not to earn his approval, but to purchase my own freedom and professional authority. The greatest victory was not the $5 million check. It was the continuous professional reality that their entire life, their former business, their current comfort, and the stability of their retirement was utterly dependent on the genius of the daughter they had ignored for pursuing a little bakery. I had used their metrics to destroy their narrative, and in doing so, I had finally proved that my self-made success was worth more than any legacy they could ever offer.